Hello, I'm Chris Burns, and welcome to The Network, where we connect into a matrix of newsmakers to get to the heart of an issue. And watch out, they've got to answer in 25 seconds or less, or else. Let's take a look at that issue right now. The battle over global warming takes to the skies. The European Union may be risking a trade war over plans to charge all airlines for their CO2 emissions that have doubled in the past 20 years. China is reconsidering 14 billion euros in Airbus orders. India, the United States, and other countries in a so-called coalition of the unwilling are also threatening retaliation. Airbus and 6 European airlines are asking for flexibility. The fight intensified after the European Court of Justice ruled last December against U.S. carriers contending that expanding the EU emissions trading system to international airlines is an unfair tax. While airline greenhouse gas emissions make up only about 3.5% of the EU total, they continue to grow, despite calls for many years to reduce them. And with world talks toward a new CO2 cutting agreement bogged down, the EU's unilateral move could be a test case for other such actions by those who contend there's no time to lose. Now, wired into this edition of The Network is, here from the European Parliament in Brussels, Jörg Leichtfried, who's an MEP with a group of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats. He's a member of the Committee on Transport and Tourism. Also here at the Parliament, Joris den Blanken, who's Greenpeace's EU Climate and Energy Policy Director. And also in Brussels, from the Euronews studio, is Attar Hussein Khan, who's Deputy Secretary General of the Association of European Airlines, or AEA. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Let's start with a question for all of you, starting with Jörg. Are we facing a potential trade war over this? And is the risk worth standing by this carbon tax? More than 40 nations are opposed, and the U.S. is threatening appropriate action if you follow through.
I think our problem is that we're facing a massive climate change problem and not a trade war problem. And the European Union is acting in this case. And I would really ask other states to act as well. What the European Union has done with the air industry is to try to tax them a little bit and to reduce this greenhouse gases. And I think that's the real right way we shall go.
Okay, but let me pitch this over to yours. Similar question is it really fair to do that, for an airline to pay for the entire flight, even if it's not over Europe itself?
It's absolutely fair. There is a huge climate change problem, and in aviation it's normal that airports can put certain regulation on the planes landing at the airports. And that's also the case here. And the European Court of Justice has ruled it's correct, both in international law and in European law. So the EU should absolutely move forward with this measure on climate change. Okay, but Attar, obviously you don't agree with this. How ruinous is this going to be for the airlines?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that aviation and climate change is a global issue we believe should be dealt with at global level. And what is the problem for the European airlines at the moment is that indeed they are caught in the midst of a potential trade conflict with indeed around 40 countries. And it's already in the making. This is not something of the future. It's already in the making, not only with Airbus, but with operational measures and other problems that many of the airlines are facing today as we speak.
Right. Jörg, let me pitch this back over to you and say that there are Airbus and airlines inside the European Union, not just outside, are pressuring European leaders, saying they'll lose thousands of jobs, lose billions of euros as a result. Is Europe, in the midst of this financial crisis, is Europe ready to face this economic pain for that?
I think what airlines are doing is trying to reduce costs. If comfort of passengers costs, then they reduce the comfort. If well-working ground handling costs, they reduce well-working ground handling. And so the only possibility to reduce their greenhouse emissions is to make them cost a little bit, and then they will react. I think that's the right way we are going.
Okay. To Joris, then, there's one MEP tells me privately that one major airline here in Europe says the carbon tax is going to drive it into bankruptcy, not because of the tax, but because countries like Russia, as a result, are going to prevent them from flying over their airspace.
Of course, there are a lot of smoke and mirrors in this game. There are lots of threats, but in the end we see that airlines are complying with EU legislation. They are submitting emission reports, and we see that Also, countries are moving forward. There have never been so many countries been in favor of an international aviation deal under the ICAO, on an international aviation organization. And also, China announced recently that they need, or they consider to include aviation in their emissions trading scheme.
But Attar, regardless of this cooperation, how much do you see this danger of companies actually going bankrupt because of this?
Well, I take the point that it's not necessarily maybe the ETS in itself, but it's a combination of factors. As I said, the Indian government is threatening to withdraw overflight permissions, so are the Russians, and that would render a lot of operations between Europe and those countries and beyond those countries actually economically unsustainable.
Right. And let's talk about the passenger. We're looking ahead to the summer travel period. Lufthansa expects to spend 100 million euros this year on the emissions trading scheme, but that it could reach 1 billion in the medium term. What does that mean for airline tickets, and is that going to make airline travel prohibitive? Let's go to Jörg on this.
I think the figures are quite overdone by the airlines. The figures from the European Commission say that for longer flights it will be between 1 and 4 euros per flight. And if you know how much those tickets are costing, I think 1 till 4 euro is something that's affordable.
No, but Attar, I mean, that's in the initial stage. What about that medium term and long term, Attar? Do you see airline tickets becoming prohibitive because of this?
Well, I mean, the problem is that obviously the carbon price is going to increase. The figures that the Commission is throwing around are based on the current carbon price. We all know the carbon price is going to increase. Airlines will not be able to pass on the costs to their passengers for the simple reason that the international aviation market is simply too competitive to do so. So there is going to be, on the one hand, either an absorbing of costs on the one hand, which could very well lead to bankruptcies, or indeed a significant increase in the passenger ticket price.
Okay, but under this EU trading scheme, it's going to be quite gradual. The emissions trading scheme doesn't. The emissions trading scheme says that it's going to be 15% of the polluting rights that the airlines are going to have to pay, rising to 18% by 2013, 2020. That seems quite gradual, doesn't it, Joris? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
or is that fast enough? Should it be faster?
This is really a first step. The overwhelming majority of allowances is for free, and on top of that, aviation industries have to do far less than power plants and, for example, steel industries in Europe in terms of emission reductions. So it's really a very small first steps. And the aviation industry is basically crying wolf about this.
Okay, Jörg, what do you think?
I think it's just fair if you compare this to other transport modes, like, for example, railways. They get their energy from power plants who have to pay already then 100%. So it's just a way of comparing now airlines with other transport modes. Till now, all advantages were at the airline side, and that's something we also have to discuss if that's the right way.
Okay, Attar, does that seem gradual to you?
Well, it could be very well gradual. The problem is that comparing us to rail, I think, is not really an issue at the moment. And I can see that the allowances at the moment will be 15 to 18% in the coming years, but they will excessively grow in the years to come. So it's still a very high cost factor included with the carbon market price that we see increasing in the years to come.
Okay, the UN's International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, was asked 15 years ago to create a plan to cut airline CO2 emissions. We still don't see it yet. They're asking for more time. Has the world waited long enough, Jörg?
I think the world waited long enough. And if Europe is the one who moves the world forward, then that's a good thing to do.
Joris?
Yes, the world has waited long enough. Europe has a big climate crisis. There's also an oil crisis that could bring us in a new recession. And I'm really surprised that some of the aviation industries are wasting their time on lobbying against this legislation instead of investing their time in new clean technologies that can reduce emissions and drive innovation.
Attar, you got the last word.
Yeah, I mean, I take the point that it's been quite long. On the other hand, we do believe actually that ICAO can deliver. ICAO has a pretty good track record when it comes to technical, operational, noise issues. There is no reason to assume that they would not be able to deliver on climate change. And I think the EU does deserve credit for the fact that they have put this issue on the international political agenda. But that's not where it stops. And I would encourage the EU Commission, as well as Parliament and Member States, to make sure that ICAO can deliver in the fall of 2013 next year.
Thanks, Attar. That's all the time we've got for now. I'd like to thank our guests, Jörg Leichtfried, Joris den Blanken, and Attar Hussein Khan. I'm Chris Burns, and until next time, thanks for connecting with The Network.